Yes, so welcome participants. Good afternoon. Now it is going to start session 3 and the title was Solar Hydrogen System and resource person or Dr. B. Satyashekar, Assistant Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT, Jammu. Now my student will give some introduction about the resource person. Please, Rahul, continue.
Good afternoon to everyone. I am very glad to introduce our resource person, Dr. B. Satyashekar sir, Assistant Professor, IIT Jammu. Sir, sir has postdoctoral research fellow, Research Institute of Energy Conservation, AIST, Suguba, Jagam for the year 2014 to 2016. And sir has postdoctoral research fellow, HYSA system, Cape Town, South Africa for the year 2013 to 2014. Sir has published 5 journals. Sir has Best Paper Award received in First National Conference on Inventions in Sustainable Energy and Technology on December 3rd and 4th, 2020. Energy Institute, Bangalore, India.
మీట్లో లేదా
Sir selected by DST India for the participation in BRICS Young Scientist Enclave subject area energy, which has held in Durban, South Africa from 25th June to 29th June 2018.
ఓకేనా
Thank you, sir, for your acceptance to the delivery lecture.
Yeah.
సో
So thank you for the kind introduction.
ప్లీజ్ మేక్ టు కంటిన్యూ సార్ డాక్టర్ సత్యశేఖర్ సార్
Okay, sir.
కొంచెం ఓకే సార్ కంటిన్యూ సార్
Yeah.
నౌ ఇట్ ఈస్ ప్రెజెంటేషన్ గోయింగ్ టు స్టార్ట్ సెషన్ 3 is going to start. Please make attended. Thank you, sir.
So first of all, thank you for kind introduction, and thank you, Ramesh Reddy sir, for giving me this opportunity to talk about solar hydrogen systems. So good afternoon all. Thank you for being here to listen my talk. My plan of presentation as follows. First, I will talk about present fossil fuel economy and the related emissions. Then I will discuss about why hydrogen should be as a energy carrier. Then also we'll discuss about various elements of hydrogen and economy. Then last we'll discuss about the suggested future energy economy. So I want to quote here from Jules Verne in 1874. What he said is, hydrogen from water electrolysis to replace the coal. Means the water will be the coal of the future. So he said in the 19th century, and now we have to accept this, and we have to replace the fossil fuels with hydrogen as a energy carrier. So as we know that the global environmental challenges at present day, so we have climate change, we have air quality problem, and we have energy security problem. So actually, basically, we want to reduce the CO2 emissions as per the agreement in Paris 2050. Okay, and we want to regulate this NOx. So because of this, some countries has already taken some policies. Like if you consider this Norway and Netherlands, so they want to ban the fossil fuel vehicles by 2025. And coming into this energy security, so now everyone talking about energy security for like independent than other countries. Okay, so they do not depend on the other countries to get the energy. Suppose this Prime Minister has given that one Atmanirbhar Bharat. Okay, so that is meaning that we want to independent from the imports of energy or fossil fuels from other countries. Okay, so actually we have two problems. One is power industry problem. The second is automotive industry problem. Basically, these are challenges as well as they have some opportunities to switch from ICE engines to hydrogen-based vehicles or battery vehicles. So in this, the policies, first, we want to phase out this fossil fuel in two ways. First one is phase out of fossil fuel vehicles, okay, that is IC engines. Then the phase out of fossil fuel based power plants, okay, that is the second target. Now we can see our present global hydrocarbon economy. So what we are doing is we are using almost 75% of energy coming from the fossil fuels like oil and gas and coals. If you see that we are using fossil fuels for transportation, power production, and different applications. What we are doing is we are combusting, we are taking energy, and we are releasing the emissions. Okay. Again, here, if you see this, our energy demand from 19th century, from 1850, if you see, we started using the biomass as a energy resource. Then we shifted to coal and oil. So after that, you see 1950 to 2000, there is sharp rise in the energy demand. This is due to increase in living standards of the Western countries. Basically, it's from Western countries. From again, if you see from 1990 to 2010 or 16, again there is an increase in energy demand because this is due to rapid introduction in China, because they have almost 20 years, more than 10% GDP they have. Okay. Then you can see the next predictions. So by 2030, there is a prediction that this fossil fuel energy means usage will decrease. Okay, that will be replaced by renewable energy. You can see that the difference is increasing. Okay. Then coming into this energy balance for different countries. So we have oil, gas, and coal.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, your slides are not moving, sir.
Oh, sorry.
So press F5, sir.
Just 1 minute.
So please keep your mind in presentation mode, sir.
In window. So, is it changing now?
Yes, sir. Press F5, sir.
Yeah, I have done. Now, is it changing?
No.
Lights are changing?
No, sir. It is only in Indian reports. Now it is okay, sir.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, okay, sir.
Just I will look at it. So if I go for this presentation mode, I cannot. Now, slides are changing.
Okay, sir. Please continue, sir.
Is it slides are changing now?
No, sir.
No. Okay, so I have to.
Next slide, you press, sir. Press.
Okay, anyway. You are able to see, right?
Yeah, we are visible, sir.
So now we will discuss about this energy balance for different fuels for different countries. So if you see this USA, they are 1990, they are energy deficient country basically, but now they are surplus country. Again, if you see like Middle East, okay, so they are always energy surplus country, and again European Union always energy deficient even by 2040, similar to Asian countries, okay, like India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. These are even China. These are energy deficient countries. Okay, and also you see in 2019, India imports around $480 billion. Okay, so in that again, if you see 33% coming from the fuels, Okay, so that is the we are importing too much oil, okay, from the other countries. So if you want to increase our GDP as well as if you want to develop our own resources, so we should decrease the imports, the oils and other products. So maybe you have seen, I think recently, Prime Minister has given some speech in Independence Day. So what he said is the green hydrogen will play a significant role in achieving India's decarbonization goals. Okay. So he also announced this national ambitions to become global hub for green hydrogen production and export. So what it means is that now we are importing too much oil and gas. Okay. So we want to reduce this and we will generate hydrogen in India, and we want to export the hydrogen to other countries. Means we'll decrease the imports and we'll make hydrogen export to other countries. Okay, so that is actually the goal of the Indian government. So now we can see the projected CO2 reductions from various sources. This is also again the prediction by 2030. So how much we are reducing CO2 by 2030 from different ways. So we see this majority is coming from the mileage. So you want to reduce the CO2 test will be reduced through transportation sector by almost 35%. Then 30% is coming from the lighting and industrial motors, other applications. So the target will be majorly from transportation sector. Now I want to show different regulatory policies for internal combustion engines for different countries. So if we see, basically this internal combustion engine ban, it's open for the new opportunities for ZEV, means zero emission vehicles. Those are like battery vehicles or hydrogen based vehicles. So first, if you see the European Union, they have some policies like they have agreed already to cut the 30% of truck and buses by 2030. Similarly, the Norway has taken some ban, like combustion engine vehicles sales ban from 2025. Again, if you see that UK, France, they want to ban the sales of diesel engine vehicles by 2040. Similar, you have China and you have Korea. They have similar plans. Okay, they want to ban the diesel engine vehicles by 2030. Similarly, India have some other plans. They want to increase this battery vehicles and hydrogen vehicles to replace the IC engines. So what about this OEM's green car strategies? Okay, so the Volkswagen, actually they want to stop the making of gasoline or diesel engines in 2026. So you can see the quote from the head of the Volkswagen: in the year 2026 will be the last product start on the combustion engine platform. Similarly, that Hyundai has taken some policies. Again, Toyota, they want to eliminate gasoline engine cars by 2040. Similarly, Volvo. Then, what is the replacement of these IC engines? And what is the replacement of oil for the transport sector? So first, we have one option is natural gas, but the problem is the no long-term solution. Then second option, we have second generation of biofuels. But if you use too much biofuels, it may impact on food situation because you are using land to generate the biofuel. Again, we have impact on environment, like if you want to use too much land, then you have to cut the forest and you have to use again the fertilizers and again the water problem if you generate too much biofuel. Then we have a third option, it is electrical drives like lithium-ion batteries and other kind of batteries. At present, the battery vehicles are like too much getting importance, and the government already giving some subsidy to the electrical drives. Then other option, we have hydrogen as a fuel. So basically, this hydrogen has to come from non-fissile hydrogen, because hydrogen can be produced from fissile as well as non-fissile. Okay, I think today morning we have a session about the solar-based hydrogen production, but that is different aspect, I will talk about in a fuel cell way. So now if you see, India having targets around 175 gigawatt from the renewable energy by 2022, means next year, end of the December, we want to generate or install around 175 gigawatt power from the renewable energy. Okay, so already we have reached almost 100 gigawatt. So in that 100 gigawatt, again we already reached solar is around 40 gigawatt. Okay, that is tremendous effect. Okay, so our installation is, the growth is too much high compared to other countries. Okay, so in that renewable energy, the solar base is the, means solar is the main thing. 175 out of that 100 is coming from only solar. Okay, so you can see the global potential of various energy sources. So now this is a little bit old. By 2015, that world consumption is coming around 18.5 terawatt. But if you see the potential coming from the solar, that is 23,000 terawatt. Okay, and also you can see other sources, but the solar is the main one, and then it will go to wind. Okay, so now so we said about around 40 gigawatt already installed solar power, but the problem is that now we are connected to the grid during daytime. So if you see that the installed capacity of the total installed capacity of the power sector in India, it's coming, the renewable energy is coming from around 22%. By this is the value is coming from January 2021 from the MNA website. And how much it is generating power, means the ratio compared to the total grid, around 11%. So 11% of electricity coming from renewable energy to the grid. So I think 10, 15, 11% it is okay, because the, you know, right, the renewable energy is intermittent nature. So the controlling this supply and demand is very, very important factor. So if this 10% is going from 20%, then making these arrangements for supply and demand matching, it's not easy. So we have to create some kind of energy storage systems. You cannot create this energy storage by batteries, because the battery cost is too much high to store that much energy. Okay, so batteries are used for only small capacity to store the electrical energy, but for grid and all, the batteries are not useful. So you have to go other kind of storage systems. So if you see this present green car strategy, so you want to ban the ICE engine, so you want to bring the new technologies like ZEVs, zero emission vehicles. First, what is the goal is that first you are going for hybridization, means we are having first combustion as well as electrification, means the car will have ICE engine as well as battery. Okay. Then next phase we are going for fully electrification, means there is no ICE engine will be there. Either we have the car based on the battery based vehicle, or the car will be the hydrogen based vehicle. Okay. So again, in this ZEVs, zero emission vehicles, we have batteries are there, we have hydrogen based fuel cells. So if you see the batteries, basically these are useful, battery based vehicles useful if you go within the city like 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers. But if you have a truck, so it has to go like 1,000 kilometers or 2,000 kilometers. Okay, then your battery capacity, okay, the required battery capacity is too large. So you have to carry this much about volume of battery is not possible for the truck. So in that case, these battery systems are not useful. So in that case, you have to go for hydrogen based fuel cell vehicles. So for long run as well as for heavy vehicles, you have to go choose hydrogen-based vehicles, whereas the small vehicles as well as the vehicles are going within the city, like 50 to 100 kilometers per day, then the battery vehicles are good compared to hydrogen fuel-based vehicles. But again, if you these battery vehicles, if the power is coming from fossil fuels, then there is no use. Just what we are doing is we are producing CO2 emissions instead of within the city. We are producing somewhere to generate the electricity. So if the power is coming from renewable energy, then only you can say that is clean mobility. Okay. So the power is coming from renewable energy, then we can see the clean mobility. Then again, is similar to that hydrogen also. If the hydrogen producing from fossil fuel, then it will not call as the clean fuel. Okay. Again, you have to produce hydrogen from the fossil renewable energy. Then only we can say that is clean mobility. Okay. So now we discussed about the battery vehicles and fuel cell vehicles. First of all, what is the difference between the fuel cell as well as battery? The fundamentally both are electrochemical devices, but batteries basically it will store the chemicals inside. Whereas fuel cell, we will supply continuously the fuel to the fuel cell to generate the power. In battery case, it usually it will goes dead after certain period of time, means if after discharge. Whereas fuel cell, it can generate continuously electricity as long as you are supplying the fuel. So that is the major difference between the fuel cell as well as the battery. So now, so here you can see the small animation about the fuel cell. So we are supplying hydrogen from to the anode side, and cathode side we are supplying the oxygen. Okay. So what will happen is this hydrogen will dissociate into one proton and one electron. Proton will transport through your membrane and it will go to other side, cathode side, and the electron will not pass through the membrane. It will go to the electrical load. Okay, you can see the yellow color. So this the function of the membrane here is it will only allow the protons, not electrons. So cathode side the oxygen is coming, and the other side we have a protons as well as electrons. So all will combine as a water vapor. So here our input is hydrogen as well as oxygen, and output is electricity as well as the heat, because this is exothermic reaction. So fuel cell will operate in exothermic mode, whereas electrolyzer will operate in endothermic mode, depend upon the temperature. So compared to IC engines, what are the advantages of fuel cell? Basically, it will convert the chemical energy from fuel directly into electricity. Then it is having high efficiency compared to IC engines. There is no noise and stable power generation, reduced expensive power transmission, and less polluting. There is no pollution at all. So here you can see the fuel cell versus battery-based vehicles. So as I explained before, so if you go for 100 kilometers per day, then the battery vehicles at present, economic-wise, battery vehicles are good compared to fuel cell vehicles. But if you have like a long distance, you want to go like 1,000 kilometers, or you have like big trucks and all, then the fuel cell vehicles are better than the battery vehicles. So you can see how much energy storage per with respect to the number of miles. So if you see the number of miles are increasing, that volume is increasing. So for battery vehicles, if you want to go for 1,000 kilometers, then you have to keep one more truck backside of the vehicle. Okay, so that will take a lot of electricity to carry that much amount of battery. Okay. But if you see hydrogen, it is not increasing drastically like exponentially like battery. So that increment in the volume, okay, it is linear. So this is the advantage of fuel cell based vehicles compared to battery-based vehicles. So again, why hydrogen deserves attention? I think morning the Dr. Jaykrishna explained about what are the advantages of hydrogen-based vehicles and how to produce hydrogen from solar energy. So his aspect is solar thermal-based hydrogen production, but I will talk about solar PV-based hydrogen production. So if you see, as I told, we started from wood and we went to liquids, then we are moving to gases. So the gases, the usage increasing, okay, increment, whereas liquids and solids are decreasing. So if you see, hydrogen is the very smallest of all atoms, okay, and it is having high energy content per weight compared to gasoline. It's almost 3 times energy content. But the problem is it is very low energy density per unit volume, means we need large storage tanks. So what we will do is either we have to go for a compressor based hydrogen storage tank or liquefied hydrogen storage tank, or we have to use another method to store the hydrogen. So this is the hydrogen ion system. So what we will do is we will use water and use renewable energy to produce hydrogen as a clean energy that will be used for transportation vehicles or other like commercial purpose residential applications. Okay, then finally you will generate the water. So here there is no pollution coming into the picture. So here you can see the future hydrogen economy, how it's look like. So as I told, we have to produce the hydrogen either from renewable energy or nuclear energy. So this hydrogen will be used to for transport vehicles, okay, or other industrial applications. Basically, you will combust hydrogen. It will generate water. Okay, again, for producing hydrogen, you will use water from the environment. So compared to fossil fuel economy, here there is no pollution. So if you see normal fuel cell electrical vehicle, so these are the components we have. One is we have to store the hydrogen to supply to the fuel cell, and again we have a fuel cell that will generate the electricity to run the motor. Okay, and as I told, this the electricity demand, okay, coming from the vehicle, it may not match with the fuel cell electricity. Okay. Sometimes you need high amount of electricity compared to the batteries, this fuel cell production generation. So in that case, what we will do is we will use a small battery to match the fluctuations coming from the demand and supply. So these are the components for hydrogen fuel vehicle. So we have different types of fuel cells. Like first, we have PEM fuel cell, we have direct methanol fuel cell, we have organic fuel cell, and we have phosphoric fuel cell, we have molten carbon fuel cell, and we have solid oxide fuel cell. Basically, these are different fuel cells will work on different principles. Okay, some fuel cells will use hydrogen as an input, and some fuel cells will use other types of the fuel input. And also the electrolyte may be different for different fuel cells. Again, the other side, okay, cathode side, the requirement will be for oxygen in some fuel cell or carbon dioxide for some fuel cell. Again, if you see that operating temperature, again it's different for like PEM fuel cell, and again it will increase up to solid oxide fuel cell. So for automobile applications, PEM-based fuel cell is very well matched with the requirements for transport applications compared to like solid oxide fuel cell, because it has to operate at above 800 degrees centigrade. So you cannot operate for transport application, but it can be used for other purpose. So you can see the comparison of various fuel cells. as I told, these fuel cells will use different kinds of electrolytes or different kinds of fuels. Some fuel cell will use methanol, or some fuel cell will use hydrogen, okay, natural gas, and other coal. And also these power ranges are different for different fuels. Like maybe direct methanol you can use from watts to kilowatts. PEM also similar, watts to kilowatts. You can generate up to 100 kilowatt. But if you go for solid oxide fuel, you can generate up to megawatts. Okay, you can have a small plant using the solid oxide fuels. Again, applications are different. For a PEM fuel cell, you can use for vehicles, small generators. Okay, small like CHP application. Whereas alkaline fuel cell, they are already using from space around 50 years, last long 15 years. Okay, then if you use the molten carbide fuel or solid oxide fuel cells, so these are basically CHP applications like power plants, okay, combined heat and power generation. And all. For power plants, the solid oxide fuel cell is very good compared to other kind of fuel cells. I will explain later why the solid oxide fuel cell is very useful for the small power plants, okay, distributed power plants. So if you see this, the brief history of the fuel cell, okay, if you see the concept is coming from Sir William Grove. He demonstrated fuel cell operating principle in 19th century, 1839. Okay, it's very long. It is demonstrated the fuel cell. Then again reinvented by Francis Bacon. Started working on fuel cells in almost 1 century later, 1937. So by end of the 1950, he is able to develop 6 kilowatt cell. Actually, this is a very tremendous effort to develop 6 kilowatt cell in 1915 itself. Okay. Then the first application, practical application for fuel cell came from General Electric. They developed the first PEM fuel cell for Gemini program in 1960s for NASA. Okay. Again, this was followed by Apollo program, where Pratt and Whitney built fuel cells based on the Bacon's patents. Okay, the first application came from 1960s, almost we have 60 years back. Then, but we didn't use it for terrestrial applications. We use it for space applications. Then General Motors experimented with the fuel cell power bank with the cells from Union Carbide in 1960s. Okay. So although this fuel cell was a great success in space programs, but it was forgotten to terrestrial applications. Again, the re-entry came from fuel cell for other applications. In 1989, the Perry Energy Systems and Ballard demonstrated the proton exchange fuel cell powered submarine. Now, again, this they got the importance of the fuel cell because we have global environmental problems by using the fusel fuel energy. So we want to use hydrogen, okay, in the transport sector in a big way. So you can see here the PEM-based fundamentals. Okay. So this is one single fuel cell. Okay. So this one is your bipolar plate. Okay, and these are your gas diffusion layer, and you have two electrodes, one electrolyte. Okay, so basically this bipolar plate, it will supply your fuel. Okay, then it will go to the gas diffusion layer and it will go to the catalyst layer. Okay, so the single cell will not generate too much of power. What you have to do is you want to have like a like kilowatt or like 100 of kilowatt. What you have to do is you have to stack the number of cells. Then you can increase the power. So if you consider this single one, you can see here. Okay, so this is your bipolar plate. So it will basically to supply the hydrogen and oxygen, hydrogen for anode side and oxygen for cathode side. So after that, we have a gas diffusion layer. It will distribute the fuels to the catalyst layer. The catalyst layer, what it will do is it will dissociation, means the chemical reactions occur at the catalyst layer. Okay. Then we have a membrane here. Then another side we have another catalyst layer, again gas diffusion layer, and one more you have bipolar plate. So this is the configuration of single fuel cell. So now you can see the basic reactions for the fuel cells. First, you can see the anode side. Basically, anode side, the hydrogen will dissociate into protons as well as electrons. Okay. Again, in cathode side, this will recombine this hydrogen, oxygen, electron. It will become the water vapor. Okay. The overall reaction will be, H2 plus O2 is equivalent to H2. So if you consider this various kind of heat of reactions like higher heating value and lower heating value. So higher heating value is like 286 joules per mole, whereas lower heating value it is only just 241 joules per mole. Okay. And if you want to calculate the electrical work, so how much the power is generating from the fuel cell, you can calculate by using this equation, that is W is equal to NFE, whereas W is the electrical work produced by the fuel cell, N is the number of electron per mole of fuel, F is the Faraday's number, okay, E is the potential. Okay, so assuming that you go for ideal case, okay, so total Gibbs free energy is converted into electrical work. Okay, then we can calculate the cell potential, how much voltage it can generate the single cell, that will be 1.23 volts. This is ideal case, but in practical, the voltage generated by the single fuel cell will be less than this. Okay. Now, based on this ideal case, you can calculate the maximum energy efficiency of the system. So, if you use higher heating value, that will be around 83%, and if you use lower heating value, that will be around 94%. Okay. Now, you can think the Carnot efficiency of IC engine is less compared to these values. Then you can also have a doubt why this efficiency is higher than the Carnot efficiency, because this fuel cell, it is not basically heat engine, but it is an electrochemical engine, because therefore the Carnot efficiency limit will not applicable here. So that's why I told earlier the fuel cells are highly efficient compared to IC engines. So if you calculate efficiency in CHP applications, like if you take power as well as heat, okay, then the efficiency will go to around 80%. Okay. So if you consider both power generation as well as heat generation from the fuel cell, it can go efficiency up to 80%. Then now, if you see the different parts of the fuel cells, okay. So first we'll see the main important part of the fuel cell is the polymer membrane. We'll call that is polymer electrolyte membrane or PEM fuel cell. So basically the role is these membranes are solid electrolytes that conduct protons but are impermeable to gaseous phase. It means that it will only allow protons, not electrons. The material, basically these are used by perfluorocarbon sulfonic acid ionomer. Okay, so we'll call basically like Nafion, that is developed by DuPont company. Okay. This is very famous membrane in fuel cells, Nafion. So the thickness will be around 20 microns. Okay, so very small. Then what are the desired properties for the membranes? If we see, basically it's required high proton conductivity, because it has to conduct the protons efficiently to the other side from anode to cathode side. And chemically inert, there should not be any chemical reactions occur in the membrane side. And also mechanically it should be strong against swelling, because the heating, the contraction, expansion, okay, it should be strong. Then if you talk about the catalyst layer, okay, so basically the catalyst layer, it is the pressure between electrolyte and gas diffusion layer. So as I shown earlier, it is in between the electrolyte as well as gas diffusion layer. So what is the role of this catalyst layer is basically all the desired reactions takes place at this site. Okay. Then what are the materials we can use for catalyst layer is the platinum is the best material, but the problem is that platinum cost is very high. Okay, so now some research already done. So they have developed the alloys, the platinum based alloys, means the platinum content is decreased compared to only just platinum based material, but other kind of materials also is coming into the picture. So here the thickness is around less than 10 microns, could be thinner in anode side compared to cathode side. So what are the desired properties for the catalyst layer is obviously it is highly reactivity and resistance to corrosion and coagulation. So next part is your gas diffusion layer. Okay, so this layer is between the catalyst layer as well as bipolar plate. So what is the role here is this basically it's a porous layer for distributing the reactions evenly to all these reaction sites, means the catalyst layer, and you have to remove the product. That is the objective of the gas diffusion layer. Okay, it has another equally important task, like it has to connect electrically the catalyst layer as well as with bipolar plate, and also it should have high thermal conductivity to remove the waste heat, okay, from the reaction. So the metal will be either you can use a carbon paper of carbon cloth. The thickness will be 100 to 200 microns. Okay. The desired properties like high porosity, okay, and it should be hydrophobic to help to remove the water, okay, and high electrical conductivity and corrosion resistance. So these are the desired properties for gas diffusion layer, or we call GDL. Then the final one will be the bipolar plate. Okay, basically we call this is current collector. Okay, so this is the outmost component of the fuel cell. It has having gas channels to supply reactants as well as to remove the products. So the role is connect the outer circuit and drive the current and remove waste heat from the fuel cell and provide structural strength to the each cell. So material will be either you can use graphite, more common. Thickness will be 1 mm. This is the thickest part in the fuel cell. Then the desired properties, like you need high electrical as well as thermal conductivity, corrosion resistance, and mechanical strength. So these are the different parts of the fuel cell. Next important is water balance. Water balance is very, very important in fuel cells. Okay, so basically water is essential to PEM-based operation, because to maintain this high proton conductivity, membrane must always well hydrated. Okay, then only you can efficiently transport the proton from anode to cathode. So water is produced in cathode catalyst layer, which is adjustable to membrane. So too much water results in condensation and therefore blockage of electrode and gas diffusion layers. Okay, so what will happen if the water is too much high? Then it will stop the hydrogen as well as oxygen. Then the fuel cell will stop. Okay, that we call as the flooding in the fuel cell. Once the flooding has happened, the fuel cell will stop working, generating power. So you have to maintain the proper amount of balance, water balance in the PEM fuel cell. It should not too low and it should not too high. Then the coming into this hydrogen production. So how you will generate hydrogen to use in the fuel cell vehicles? That is very, very important. Okay, so if you want to have the hydrogen fuel cells, first you have to generate hydrogen from the renewable energy sources. Okay, so present technologies we have like steam reforming of natural gas around 48%, and partial oxidation of hydrocarbons by 30%. And the partial oxidation of coal 18%, and electrolysis 4%. So most of the hydrogen we are producing from fossil fuels. Okay, so now it has to shift from fossil fuel to renewable energy production. Okay, then only these hydrogen-based fuel cells we call green vehicles or zero emission vehicles. So now we have a hydrogen production and we have fuel cell vehicles. How to use the hydrogen, but how to store the hydrogen, that is very, very important concept for fuel cell vehicles or stationary purpose. First, we have different options like high pressure gas cylinders, maybe that you have seen that red color cylinder, and there is another option that is liquid hydrogen cryogenic tanks. Okay, that is also second option. We have different metals which will absorb hydrogen, like metal hydrates, liquid chemicals, porous materials, carbon nanometals, or glass microspheres. So we have different options for hydrogen storage purpose, but we have to see which one will be more useful or which one will be more practically used on transport vehicles. So we'll see first high pressure gas cylinders, the conventional methods. Here, you know, right, hydrogen is the very low density gas. So if you want to carry at atmospheric pressure, you have to use huge big tanks to store the hydrogen. Whereas you want to reduce that volume, what you have to do is just you compress the hydrogen in the tank, so you can reduce the volume, but still you can maintain the same amount of hydrogen inside the tank, so that the volume can be reduced. Okay, so we have a different technologies like storage cylinder up to 700 bar and 800 bar, these tanks. Okay, composite metal tanks. But the problem is here, to reduce this means to compress the hydrogen up to 700 bar and to store in the tank. So you have to spend around 18% of the hydrogen energy which is stored in the tank. It means that suppose you want to store 300 bar or 350 bar hydrogen in the tank. Okay, so from atmospheric pressure to 300 bar, 350 bar, you have to compress the hydrogen. So that compression energy, it will take almost 18% of that 350 bar hydrogen energy. Means you already lost 20% for compression itself. Okay, so that much energy is required to compress the hydrogen. Then the second option, we have a cryogenic tanks. Maybe you know that hydrogen can be liquefied at ambient pressure at only 20 Kelvin. So you have to go that much low temperature to liquefy the hydrogen. So then once you liquefy hydrogen, the volume will be less. Okay, but the problem is here we have a boil-off process, because whatever you do insulation, some heat loss will be there. So obviously it will boil, the hydrogen will boil, then you cannot arrest inside. So the boiled hydrogen has to go out. Okay, otherwise the pressure will increase inside. Okay, so like this, you lose some hydrogen through boil-off process. And one more important here, the energy required for liquefaction is very high compared to compression. It is almost 35% of hydrogen energy it will take. So suppose you are liquefying 1 kg of hydrogen. So for liquefying hydrogen itself, it will take the 35% of energy of the 1 kg of hydrogen. Okay, means you have to spend a lot of energy to liquefy the hydrogen. So these are the two conventional methods, but these are having some drawbacks. Then we have a third method, solid storage media. Okay, you can see we have different materials to store the hydrogen. Okay, at atmospheric pressure and temperature. So compared to this compressor-based hydrogen, liquid-based hydrogen, you can see the metal hydrates, how much amount of hydrogen stored per unit volume. So it is very high compared to compressor-based hydrogen in metal hydrates. You can also see how much volume of the tank is required for metal hydrates as well as compressor hydrogen cylinder or liquid hydrogen cylinder. So if you go for this solid state media, then you can decrease the volume of the hydrogen storage tank, so that your vehicle will be the volume of its vehicle requirement will be less. Okay, the standard requirement from the DOE, means Department of Energy of USA, they have given some conditions, standard conditions, like it has to have like 5-8%, and operating temperatures should be from -20 to 50 degrees centigrade. Okay, then refueling time will be 0.5 kg per minute, means you have to refill the hydrogen within the minute of half kg of hydrogen. Okay, then delivery pressure should be about 2.5 bar. Means if you want to supply this hydrogen to fuel cell, you have to supply with certain amount of pressure. That is, like you need around 2.5 bar to the fuel cell. Okay. So as I told, this we can use solid state materials to store the hydrogen. So here I'm showing about metal hydrates. Basically, metal hydrates are like intermetal compounds formed by allying of different metals by either by ball milling or melting. So basically, it will absorb dissolved hydrogen at different temperature and pressure. So if you see this absorption, okay, so you have a material and you supply hydrogen, it will absorb the hydrogen into the metal hydrate and it will release some heat, because the absorption is the exothermic reaction. Whereas you want to generate hydrogen from this metal hydrate, what you have to do is you have to supply heat. Okay, then this metal hydrate will dissolve hydrogen. Okay, so this dissolved hydrogen you can supply to the fuel cell. So I'll show after 2-3 slides how this metal hydrate will be used for onboard applications. So you can use the metal hydrates for various applications like hydrogen storage, hydrogen compressor, like heat pumps. Okay, so basically these metal hydrates is a like heat driven mass transfer phenomena. Okay, so absorption, it is exothermic reaction. Once it is absorbed hydrogen into the metal hydrate, it will release heat. Again, if you want to dissolve hydrogen for fuel cell vehicle, okay, you have to supply the heat. Then it will dissolve the heat. So that's why we call it is heat driven mass transfer phenomena. Again, metal hydrates, the absorption have like sub process like Fiji sorption. Okay, just your hydrogen molecule will stick to the metal hydrate surface. Then chemisorption, these hydrogen molecules will divide into 2 different atoms. Then surface penetration, these atoms will penetrate through the surface. Then we have a diffusion. Then we have a final nucleation and growth. So basically, it will become metal hydrate. So desorption will be entirely opposite. Okay, this is the absorption and desorption of the metal hydrate. So hydrogen storage by metal hydrates, basically I explained, you can store hydrogen at room temperature and atmospheric pressure compared to your conventional methods like compressor based hydrogen cylinders or liquid hydrogen cylinders. Okay, so compared to that, you can store hydrogen at room temperature and atmospheric pressure. High storage capacities, okay, and ability to absorb, release large amount of hydrogen many times without getting any deterioration. Okay, and also you can control this absorption desorption by your adjusting temperature and pressure. Okay, so different metals will have like different operating conditions based on that one you can use. You can also use you can play with this heat, whereas the exothermic reaction and endothermic reaction. You can also create some kind of thermal machines. Okay, and it is very safe storage for particularly for mobile applications. Can effectively go for like more than 15,000 cycles. So these are the various applications, and you can also see the pressure composition isotherm for different materials. So these are the various advantages if you use the metal hydrate based energy conversion systems. We have these are environment friendly. Okay, utilize low grade energy, compact in construction, no moving parts. Okay, offer wide range of operating conditions. There is no liquid circuit. Okay, operate in any orientation. These are the various advantages of the metal hydrate systems. So now I'll show one practical system where we have worked on golf cart. hydrogen-based Wolf cut. Okay, you can see here. First, we have developed the hydrogen storage cylinder based on the metal hydrates. Okay, so you can see the metal hydrate system for hydrogen storage and supply to low temperature PEM fuel cell for automotive applications. Here you can see in this figure, the first one is your stainless steel container. Second is your heat exchanger. Why you need heat exchanger is, as I mentioned earlier, this is metal hydrate hydrogen absorption desorption is heat driven mass transfer phenomena. Okay, so if you want to absorb the hydrogen very fast, like it is given by DOE 0.5 kg per minute, then in that case, if you want to have high absorption rate, then you have to remove the heat as much as possible fast, because if it's an external action, your hydrogen is absorbing, so you have to remove that heat. Otherwise, the pressure will the pressure will increase. Then your absorption rate will decrease. So, in order to increase the heat transfer in the cylinder, we have used some kind of heat exchanger, copper-based heat exchanger. Sorry. Then we have a hydrogen manifold, and we have filter and valve and other valve pressure production, and water manifold, inlet and outlet. Again, as I told, in desorption is heat-driven mass transfer phenomena. You have to supply heat to dissolve the hydrogen from the cylinder. So basically, when you are operating in the fuel cell mode, it has to dissolve hydrogen to supply to the fuel cell. So that heat has to come from the fuel cell. So here you can see the integration of metal hydrate system with PEM fuel cell in electric Golf quad. So here you can see this layout of this total system. First one is your metal hydrate container for hydrogen storage. Second is your compressed gas cylinder. It is act as a buffer cylinder. The third is you have power pressure reducer, means because you are using compressed gas hydrogen cylinder, so it has to reduce the pressure before supplying to the fuel cell. Fourth is your recharging valve. Whenever your the hydrogen is over, then you have to recharge through this valve. And 5 is the heat exchanger in the metal hydrate. As I told, this metal hydrate absorption desorption is heat and mass transfer phenomena. For desorption, you have to supply the heat. For absorption, you have to remove the heat from the metal hydrate. Again, 6 and 10, the air liquid heat exchangers. 11th is fuel cell stack. So here you can see this fuel cell and metal hydrate are integrated thermally. Means, as I explained in fuel cell, if you supply hydrogen to fuel cell, it will generate heat as well as electricity. So generated heat will be supplied to metal hydrate to generate dissolve the hydrogen. So like that, the generated heat in the fuel cell can be utilized for dissolving the hydrogen from the metal hydrate. So this is integrated thermally driven hydrogen storage as well as fuel cell. So what we did is, initially we have used only metal hydrate cylinder to supply the hydrogen. Okay, here you can see almost we run around 1 hour this Golf quad. Okay, so after 1 hour, what happened is your hydrogen, the tank, the pressure is fallen, as well as it is not able to supply the requirement of hydrogen to the fuel cell. Then the fuel cell is stopped. Then what we have done is we added some kind of buffer cylinder, means based on the compressor gases. Okay, so then tested again. Okay, so now we can see this is hybrid system. It can go up to almost 2 hours without any disturbance. Okay, this Golf quad is tested for almost 2 hours with hybrid system. So why, if you use only metal hydride, it's coming only 1 hour. Why not? If you add some buffer cylinder, why it's coming for almost you can see almost 300 minutes? Because when you are removing hydrogen at faster rate, okay, so this is called as it will is endothermic reaction. You have to supply heat as much as possible. It's fast. If you are not able to supply the heat at a faster rate, what will happen is it will take heat from itself. Means the temperature will decrease in the metal hydride. So once the metal hydride temperature decreased, obviously the pressure also will decrease as per the PCT diagram as I shown earlier. Okay. Then what will happen? It cannot generate or dissolve hydrogen at a required pressure level. Then obviously the supply to the fuel cell will stop. Then your fuel cell will be stopped. So whereas in second case, we are using the buffer cylinder. Okay. So we are supplying hydrogen from two sources. One is metal hydride, second one is your buffer cylinder. Then the required hydrogen is coming from the metal hydride initially is low and more is from compressed hydrogen gas. Okay. So that you can supply the requirement of heat to the fuel cell. Okay. Then the temperature will maintain inside the metal hydride above atmosphere. Okay. Then the pressure also can maintain above atmosphere, so that there is no problem to dissolve the hydrogen and supply to the fuel cell from the metal hydride, so that you can run the vehicle long time. So you can see here in this picture we have shown that hydrogen coming from the two sources. One is compressor gas, second is metal hydride with time, as well as here you can see hydrogen and with time how much hydrogen is coming from compressor gas, how much hydrogen is coming from metal hydride. See, initially we are using mostly from compressor gas. Then once the heat is generated, fuel cell is transferred to metal hydride, then we are getting the hydrogen from the metal hydride, because this hydrogen will come from metal hydride by endothermic reaction. That heat has to supply by the fuel cell. Again, we talked about hydrogen refilling. So, but how to refill this compressed gas or some other applications? How to compress the hydrogen? Basically, we are using mechanical based compressors that will use electricity. Okay, and also mechanical compressors are not safe to compress the hydrogen from low pressure to very high pressure. So if you use this kind of metal hydride systems for hydrogen compression, then it can take the waste heat come from the industry. Suppose you have a waste heat around 120 to 140 degrees centigrade. Okay, that waste heat or low grade heat can be supplied to metal hydride system. It can compress from hydrogen from low temperature to high temperature. So you can play with the this pressure composition temperature graph. Okay, you can compress hydrogen from atmospheric pressure to high pressure. Once you generate hydrogen through electrolysis, suppose you are generating through electrolysis, that will be maximum you can get around 20 to 30 bar. But this 20 to 30 bar hydrogen you want to refill into the compressor gas cylinders for the hydrogen fuel vehicles, then you need some kind of hydrogen compressor to compress the hydrogen from 20 bar to around 350 bar or 700 bar. So here we have developed metal hydride based hydrogen compressor to compress hydrogen from 3 bar to 200 bar in 3 stages. Okay, the capacity is up to 5 normal meter cube per hour. So as I explained, this is 3-stage compressor. So we have used 3 kind of materials to compress hydrogen from, like suppose initial stage. For first stage, we will take hydrogen at 3 bar coming from the electrolyzer. That will be compressed at 20 bar. Then again in the second stage with the different material, will compress from 20 bar to 50 bar. Then third stage 50 bar to 200 bar. Like that, we can compress the hydrogen from 3 to 200 bar just by using the waste heat coming from the industry. No need of supply the electricity. Okay. So here you can see the pressure increment. Okay, in different stages. First stage, second stage, third stage, you can go up to almost 200 bar with time. You can see the how hydrogen is your inlet pressure. Okay. Then we have a outlet pressure. Okay. So next, so these are the various applications of metal hydrides for different like space station, industrial applications. Okay. And you can see the fuel cell based automotive applications in Germany. So now, initially we discussed about how to match the demand as well as supply. So as I told, India is having target of 175 gigawatt of the renewable energy by 2022, and it is more than like the target is very high by end of the 2030. So you want to generate a lot of power from the renewable energy, okay, and that is to supply to the grid, okay. But the problem here, this renewable energy is intermittent nature, okay. You cannot predict how much of power, means you cannot get the constant supply coming from the renewable energy, okay. So here your demand is also fluctuating, your supply also fluctuating, but you should match these two for the grid application. Basically, the load leveling and fluctuation absorption are the main bottlenecks to integration of renewable energy into the future electric system, means that grid system. Okay, so if the demand and supply is too much difference, then the grid may fail. So in that case, what you have to do is you have to store the excess amount of energy, okay, in some form. Again, that stored energy will be supplied to the grid whenever your demand is more than supply. Suppose your supply coming from the renewable energy or electrical grid is more than the demand, okay, then what you will do, you will store the excess amount power from the grid in other form. Then whenever you have demand is more than supply, suppose you consider that evening time your demand is very high, so you have to match the demand with your supply. So what you will do is you can supply from the grid, as well as you can also supply the stored amount of energy into your grid, so that you can match that high peak demand. Okay, so here we have shown the concept of totalized hydrogen energy utilization system. Basically, it will store intermittent renewable energy and supply electrical power, hydrogen, and thermal energy. So basically, you can see here we have renewable energy and we have the grid. So the excess power coming from the grid, okay, means your supply is more than demand, then the excess power will supply to the electrolyzer. Okay, the electrolyzer, what it will do is it will convert this electrical energy into hydrogen. Okay, that hydrogen will be stored in the hydrogen storage tank. Then what is next is, so suppose your demand is more in the evening time and your supply is less from this side. Okay, then we will use this hydrogen to supply to the fuel cell, and it will generate the power as well as thermal heat. Okay, so power will generate, give it to the grid, and heat we can supply to the other applications. So this system also, we can take this hydrogen for the hydrogen refueling stations. Okay, so you can supply hydrogen directly from here to the fuel cell vehicles. Okay, now with this system we can store renewable energy, okay, as well as we can supply power, hydrogen, as well as thermal energy. So this system can be worked as combined heat and power system, CHP application. Okay, so here you can see the lab scale totalized hydrogen system developed at AST, Japan. So this here you can see it is having unitized reversible fuel cell, and we have one metal hydride tank. And also you can see this inner view of the URFC, whereas we have stack, fuel cell stack, and we have a DC load for fuel cell application, whereas DC power for electrolyzer application, because in electrolyzer application you have to supply the power, whereas in fuel cell mode you have to take the power from the fuel cell. So that we use DC load as well as DC power, and we have some chilled water. So to extract the heat from the fuel cell stack. So this UFC having some 10 cells, okay, and each cell's cross section area is about 250 centimeters square. Okay, then if you consider this system in electrolyzer mode, it can take up to 4.4 kilowatt. It means that you can supply the electrical power in electrolyzer mode around 4.4 kilowatt, whereas in fuel cell mode it can generate up to 680 watt. Means the system is more towards electrolyzer mode, because here we didn't use the separate fuel cell and separate electrolyzer. So if you use separate fuel cell and separate electrolyzer, you can use same kind of like same size of system, like 4.4 kilowatt or 4.4 kilowatt fuel cell. But here, to decrease the capital cost, we used unitized reversible fuel cell. I will explain what is UFC later. Okay. So basically, this thesis, we have metal hydride used hydrogen storage tank, and it is integrated with the UFC. Okay. Now we can see the principle of unitized reversible fuel cell. So initially we have seen the fuel cell. Then what is the meaning of this unitized reversible fuel cell? Basically, it can work as a fuel cell or it can work as a electrolyzer. Means reverse mode. So whenever you have power supply mode, then it can work as electrolyzer and generate hydrogen by using the excess power. Whereas your demand is more than supply, then it can work as a fuel cell by taking the hydrogen from the storage tank. So like that, it can give both fuel cell operation as well as electrolyzer operation. So you can see the configuration of UFC, like we have a bipolar plates and MBA and other things. Like you can see the specifications of UFC. Okay, so here we have used the membrane from the Nafion 115, and the catalyst hydrogen side is platinum and oxygen side is the platinum plus iridium oxide. Coming into the gas diffusion layer, that is called as GDL or current collector. We used H2 side is carbon paper and oxygen side is titanium felt, and bipolar plate we use titanium, like it is coated with platinum. Like cells configuration, each cell is around 250 centimeters square and number of cells is around 10. So this we have already discussed about the basics of fuel cell and the various components. Now we can see the flow fluid and the various components of the ERFC. So here the ERFC will combine electrolyzer and fuel cell function in a single unit. Okay. So what it means is that if you have like a separate electrolyzer, separate fuel cell, the capital cost will be higher. Whereas if you consider this UFC, you can build in a single system. Okay. So means you can use the parts for both same parts for electrolyzer mode and fuel cell mode, because as I told, you cannot operate electrolyzer and fuel cell at the same time. There is no need, because you are using this system for energy storage, renewable energy storage. Okay, so either you have a power deficit or excess power. So if it is excess power is there, then you will use electrolyzer mode. Whereas if you have deficient power, then you will use fuel cell mode. But you won't operate the system in both applications. Okay, that's why this ERFC can work as electrolyzer fuel cell for renewable energy storage application. You can see we have a hydrogen supply line in fuel cell mode, whereas hydrogen delivery mode in electrolyzer mode. Okay. And also we have a chiller and a heat management system. As I told, the fuel cell operation is exothermic reaction. So you have to remove the heat which is generated in the fuel cell to operate safely. Okay, so for that we have used some kind of circulation pump and some kind of cooling water. So it will basically remove heat and the heat can be used somewhere, wherever you can use. Then in fuel cell mode, what we are doing is we are supplying A and we are supplying the hydrogen. It will generate power as well as heat. In reverse mode, in a electrolyzer mode, what we are doing is we are supplying the water coming from here, okay, and we are also giving the electrical energy. Okay. Then what it will do? It will produce hydrogen here and oxygen from here. So this produced hydrogen will be going to this hydrogen water separation tank because it is having some water molecules. Then we are supplying to the chiller at 12 degrees, so that whatever the remaining water vapor will be condensed. After that, it will go to back pressure valve. So by using back pressure valve, you can maintain this hydrogen production pressure. Means you can maintain up to 30 bar by using back pressure valve. Means you can supply hydrogen from like 2 bar to 30 bar in electrolyzer mode. Okay. So in fuel cell mode, again, the hydrogen is supplied through this anode side, and again maybe some fuel may not be useful in one operation. Then what we'll do is we'll supply again return to the fuel cell by using the circulation pump, so that we can increase the efficiency of fuel cell. So you can decrease the wastage of hydrogen here. So these are the two different modes of URFC: electrolyzer mode and fuel cell mode. So as I explained, this URFC can work as electrolyzer mode and fuel cell mode. Okay, so it can bring down the capital cost compared to individual systems, higher operating ratio per one device, because if you use individual systems, suppose you are using fuel cell or suppose you are using electrolyzer, like if you use electrolyzer some 8 hours, okay, the 8 hours the fuel cell should be ideal, cannot be used. Whereas if you use fuel cell mode, then electrolyzer is ideal. So in this case, what we are doing is we are keeping both in same system, so that we can increase the operating ratio, okay, per one device. And also, if you combine these both modes in a single system, we have less maintenance parts, because the same pipelines, same valves, everything we are using for both the operations. Now, coming to this hydrogen storage, we already discussed about this compressed hydrogen form, liquid form, and solid form. So here we have used this metal hydrides as a hydrogen storage medium, because it can store at ambient pressure and temperature. Because this is a stationary application, we don't need high pressure as well as very low temperature hydrogen liquefaction, because we should not give energy to the hydrogen storage coming from the system. Here you can see the schematic of metal hydride tank for hydrogen storage. Here you can see the composition of the metal hydride is MmNF5, and we used around 50 kg of metal inside the tank, and total weight, including this tank, that's a 316 tank, the total weight is around 85 kg, and the sizes of the metal hydride is around 500 microns. Okay. Then we also used some kind of heat exchanger, because as I explained, this absorption desorption are like heat and mass transfer heat and mass transfer phenomena. Okay, so metal hydride thermal conductivity is basically very, very low. You want to enhance the heat transfer inside this tank, so use that double coil heat exchanger, okay, to enhance the heat transfer within the tank. Okay, and also we use some kind of thermal insulator to arrest the heat loss to the atmosphere, so that we can calculate how much of heat we can generate from the fuel metal hydride tank in absorption, or we can also calculate how much of heat is required to supply in fuel cell mode. Now, coming into the testing. So, as you know that the solar PV power the generating power will increase up to noon, and after that it will decrease if it is a sunny day. Okay, so we want to connect this system to the renewable energy. So we tested first with solar PV system. Then the power is increasing up to afternoon, and again after that decreases. Okay, so this is the power input in electrolyzer mode. Okay, now you can see the output of the system, that is hydrogen production in electrolyzer mode option. So you can see both trend are similar, means it is exactly matching with respect to your power input, means input to the supply, and this is output from the system. We are supplying electrical energy, here we are getting hydrogen from the system. This is almost we have operated around 10 hours, because the 10 hours this solar power is generated from the PV cells. Okay, so after that what you will do is there is no power from the solar PV. Then what we have to do? We have to go back to the fuel cell mode. So because this is excess power from the solar PV, then after 10 hours there is no power generation from fuel cell. What we are doing is we are generating power through fuel cell, which is stored hydrogen. Okay, the stored hydrogen can be supplied to fuel cell. It can be generated to the power. You can see this is your hydrogen flow rate. We are supplying to the fuel cell mode. Almost we run this system around 14 hours. So here 10 hours in electrolyzer mode, whereas here we are operated around 14 hours in fuel cell mode. Okay, so total it will be around 24 hours. This is your input to the system, whereas this is output from the system. You can see here the power generation from the fuel cell. Okay, almost 14 hours. So initially we have not increased suddenly to high level, because you have to increase step by step, because there is some flooding problem will be there in the fuel cell. So once the temperature is low initially, we cannot go with this maximum amount of power. Once the temperature increases in the fuel cell, then you can increase step by step the output from the fuel cell. You can also see the results of the metal hydride tank. Okay, so this is your absorption, means the electrolyzer producing hydrogen, and it is stored in the storage tank. So because as I told, the absorption is exothermic reaction, means the heat has to extract from the metal hydride. If you are not able to extract fast, then temperature will increase. Okay, so temperature increases, again the pressure will increase as per the PCT curve. So the pressure is increases with respect to concentration in the absorption mode, whereas in desorption mode, as I explained, the hydrogen you are dissolving, that is internal mode. You have to supply heat from the fuel cell to the metal hydride tank. Okay, so that because you may not be able to supply that much of fast heat, then the metal hydride takes heat itself, so that temperature decreases. If temperature decreases, the pressure also decreases. So this will your pressure curve in desorption mode inside the tank. Then we will also see the various temperatures inside the tank and input and output of the heat of the fluid. Okay, so these are the curves inside the tank at different locations of the reactor, because as I told, this is exothermic reaction, so heat is released during absorption process. What we are doing is we are supplying some kind of heat transfer fluid at constant temperature throughout these 10 hours during electrolyzer mode. Okay, so this is your output of the heat transfer fluid, means this is your inlet temperature and this is your exit temperature. It means that this much of heat it is extracted from the metal hydride during electrolyzer option or absorption operation. Okay, so this area will give the amount of heat it is extracted from the metal hydride tank. Okay, now this is for 10 hours operation. What about remaining 14 hours operation in fuel cell mode? Okay, so this is your inlet temperature around 12 degrees. Okay, these are the various temperatures inside the metal tank. So here what we have done is, as you know, this metal desorption is endothermic reaction. What we have done is, we supplied that fluid at 12 degrees. Okay, then because it's an endothermic reaction, it will take heat from the heat transfer fluid, so that the heat transfer fluid temperature decreases. Okay, so it increases 12, initial 12, then it's coming down up to 7 degrees centigrade. Okay, because this heat supply is may not enough to dissolve the hydrogen, so the metal hydride takes the heat from itself. Okay, so these are the temperatures decreases, and this is your exit temperature of the heat transfer fluid. This is inlet temperature. Now, what is the advantage of this heat? You see, this heat is very low temperature, around 7 degrees centigrade. Okay, the cold heat. If you supply this fluid at 7 degrees centigrade to any other applications like air conditioning applications, okay, you can use this cold. Okay, for different applications, like generally you can use for air conditioning application. Okay, to generate the low temperature. Okay, so this one is above 32, and this one is around 7 degrees temperature for the air conditioning application. Okay, so like that you can generate heat in both like heating mode as well as cooling mode. So this is one type of operation. Then these are the different parameters to calculate the efficiency: electrolyzer mode, fuel cell mode. Okay, with including heat output from the metal hydride. Okay, so these are the various performance parameters to see the how much of efficiency we can get from the UFC. So I'm going to next slide. Now here I can see the schematic of energy flow from the power input to the electrolyzer, and as well as power output from the fuel cell mode. So this one is your input to the electrolyzer. We are supplying total electrical energy coming from the renewable, so that we are supplying into electrolyzer. So this one is converting into hydrogen, some heat loss, and some reversible heat to the from the electrolyzer. So we have converted almost this much energy of renewable energy into this much hydrogen energy. Now in power deficient mode, you have to supply the power from the fuel cell. Now what we are doing is, we stored hydrogen in the electrolyzer mode. This will be supplied to stack, so that it can generate the power as well as thermal heat. So some heat we cannot extract because it's some losses, and some heat we can extract for other thermal applications. So, and also the generated electricity, some are used for balance of plant applications, like we have to use for compressor and other components. Okay, so some amount of power which is generated by fuel cell itself, it will consume. Okay, so this is the schematic of energy flow from electrolyzer operation and fuel cell operation. Okay, now we can see the performance data of the thesis for a sunny day. Okay, now you can see here the electrolyzer efficiency we got around 83%. If you include the heat output from the electrolyzer, okay, that will count as 94%. Whereas in fuel cell operation, the efficiency is around 24%. If we add heat output from the fuel cell, it will become the 52%. Means this is the CHP efficiency. Now, if you calculate the entire round efficiency, like electrical input and electrical output with heat output, we can get the around 51%. Okay. Now, again, you can also add the heat output from the metal hydride during absorption, the cold heat output from the metal hydride during desorption. If we add these two, the total will become 64%. 64% of the total system. So here, this is efficiency of your reactor, your absorption tank. So out of hydrogen absorbed the heat, we have recovered around 83% by using a heat exchanger. So remaining 17% it is lost to the atmosphere. Okay. So this is coming from this is 6.76 by theoretical amount of heat liberated in the metal hydride. So that is 83%. So total efficiency of the system is 64% for both electrolyzer operation and fuel cell operation. Now we can see the same system for cloudy day. So as you know that in sunny day you have the power generation from solar PV will increase and will decrease, but most of the days it is not, the pattern is not similar to that. So most of the days it is having the fluctuations. Okay, that if it is cloudy day, there will be too much fluctuations coming from the power of the fuel cell, PV cell. Now we tested this system for cloudy day. So morning is sunny day, but afternoon is partly cloudy. Now we want to see how this system will react to this fluctuating power input. Okay, so we run this system in electrolyzer mode. So with this fluctuating power, and we can see the hydrogen output from the electrolyzer. You can see it is both are well matching, means the system responded properly to your power supply. So both are well matching this power input as well as output from the system. Means the electrolyzer efficiency means responded efficiently without having any problem by taking this fluctuation energy. Okay. Again, we run the fuel cell mode in night time, but this is similar to your previous test. The important thing is how the system taking this fluctuation energy and generating hydrogen. That should be very important. Similarly, again, we have plotted for this hydrogen storage tank. You can see these fluctuations because of the afternoon cloudy session. Okay, again here there is fluctuations in the temperature, because once your generating hydrogen is dropped, then what you use, the temperature inside the metal hydride tank also drop, because this is exothermic reaction. Once your hydrogen absorption is reduced or decreased, then your temperature also decrease, because you are taking heat from the heat transfer fluid. Okay, once your absorption increases, again the temperature will increase because of this exothermic reaction. Here also the heat output from the system, it is again depend upon how much amount of hydrogen it is absorbing. Okay, so directly proportional, this heat is directly proportional to the amount of hydrogen generated by the electrolyzer. Okay, so that's why these fluctuations are coming, because this is due to fluctuating in the amount of hydrogen generated by the electrolyzer. Again, you can see the fuel cell operation. Fuel cell operation is similar to your sunny day, because there is no fluctuation affecting on the fuel cell mode. You can see the performance data. There is no difference. So the system is responding very fast with the fluctuating power. Now, so till now we have seen the PEM-based fuel cell, but the drawback of the PEM-based fuel cell is we can take this waste heat up to 70 degrees or 65 degrees. Okay, but these 65 degrees, 75 degrees, most of the applications it is not useful. Okay, so only we can consider only power coming from the fuel cell as a output. Okay, but if you go for solid oxide, reversible solid oxide fuel cell, so there, as I explained before, this solid oxide fuel cell will operate at 800 to 1000 degrees centigrade. So it means that you are getting waste heat coming from the fuel cell at 800 degrees centigrade. So these 800 degrees centigrade heat is very useful, okay, to generate the electrical power as well as for various applications. So here we have shown some kind of energy analysis for integrated plant based on the reversible solid oxide fuel cell and metal hydride system, Rankine cycle, and absorption difference system. Now I explain here the operating principle. Similar to previous case, we are supplying the renewable energy power to the electrolyzer mode. Okay, so it will generate hydrogen, and the hydrogen will be stored in the metal hydride storage tank. Okay, by storing, obviously it will release some heat, so that will be output from the system. Okay, so this is and again some heat will be used for steam generation, because we have to maintain this electrolyzer at about 700 to 800 degrees centigrade. We have to supply some heat to maintain the temperature. Again, in SOFC mode, we have to supply hydrogen from the storage tank to the fuel cell operation. Okay, so in this case, what is, if you see, consider about this energy outputs. One is you will get heat output from the fuel cell. So that heat, some heat we have to give to metal hydride storage tank, okay, because it has to dissolve hydrogen, and remaining heat we are supplying to the organic Rankine cycle. Okay, so that organic Rankine cycle, it will take the heat, and in the heat exchanger 1, what is that, the liquid will become vapor and it will go to the turbine, and it will do the work. We will get the this turbine will be connected to the generator, and we are getting the electrical energy. Again, after that, the steam, the waste steam, it will go to heat exchanger. So you can extract some kind of some amount of waste for heating application. So if you don't have any heating application, what we will do is will supply this waste heat to heat exchanger 3. So this heat exchanger will act as a generator for the vapor absorption cycle. So I think most of them you know that vapor compression diffusion cycle will work based on the electricity. So you have to supply electricity, whereas vapor absorption system, this is work based on the thermal input. So this is thermal driven system, whereas the VCRC is electrical driven system. So here this waste heat we are supplying to the generator, so that the vapor absorption system, it can generate the required temperature for air conditioning application. Again, it will go to liquid go to will pump, and it will go to the again heat exchanger to again extract heat, and it will become steam. It will go to again. So this cycle will continue in SOFC mode. Okay. So here we have 3 types of output. One is your electrical energy coming from solid oxide fuel cell, whereas thermal energy in heating mode, whereas air conditioning load coming from the vapor absorption cycle. So this will work as a combined heat and power as well as cooling. So CCHP, combined cooling, heating and power mode. So here also you can see this is different kind of system. As I explained, this is one is the our vapor absorption difference cycle that generated is connected to the your condenser. So we have a solid oxide fuel cell system. This is coming from the fragile fuel, whereas this one is coming from the directly from your renewable energy sources. Okay. This is another kind of system based on the solid oxide fuel cell. Right. So here they are using metal hydride system for various heating applications. Okay. So as I told, metal hydrides can be used for like heat pump applications. There is a heat upgradation or air conditioning applications. Now you can see the actual plant based on this type of concept. You can maybe you may heard about this Berlin airport project. This system having like you have around 40 wind turbines. Okay, almost each turbine can generate up to 1.8 to 2.3 megawatt. Okay, and we have here they have like 500 kilowatt electrolyzer to generate hydrogen when you have excess power, and there is 2 CHP units because this is metal hydride storage, and we have a hydrogen refueling station. Okay, this generated hydrogen will be supplied here, and it can supply the hydrogen for fuel cell vehicles. Okay, so like this we have a CHP plant, means the stored hydrogen will be supplied here to and here to the fuel cell, and it can again generate to electricity as well as thermal heat. Okay, so this is the real project which I explained before. We have a renewable energy supply, and we are storing energy, and also we are supplying hydrogen to the hydrogen fuel vehicles. Okay. This is we have discussed till now that hydrogen and electricity, the future energy economy. So we have CO2 free primary energy. So we'll get electricity and we'll get hydrogen for transport and storage applications. Like we have a storage, like this is coming from battery vehicles, this is coming from fuel cell vehicles. Okay. So there is no pollution coming from the future energy economy. This is what we need for next 10-20 years. So again, similar, we have a similar kind of system. This solar energy, electrolyzer, hydrogen storage, fuel cell, again demand. There is one more example in Norway. So this kind of system they are using, that is called as Utsira Island in Norway. Then they are also using some kind of wind turbines. Okay, and they are using a hydrogen system to balance this power, as well as small battery system for grid stabilizing equipment. Okay, so they are storing hydrogen, excess power, and supplying to the households. This is very small island in Norway. Similar kind of system, and you can see that different hydrogen cars by Hyundai. One is Tuscan, and second is Nexo. Nexo is the recent car. So what are the challenges for hydrogen economy? First is obviously you have to produce hydrogen. The price of renewable energy based hydrogen higher than the hydrogen from hydrocarbons. So maybe I think you may heard about the recent Ambani has given statement that you want to generate hydrogen or sell the hydrogen, 1 kg of hydrogen for $1 by 2030. Okay, so now the cost is around $5 to $10 per kg of hydrogen, but you want to sell 1 kg of hydrogen for $1. That is the target for Reliance Industries. Okay, so if you want to compete with respect to your fragile fuel based hydrogen for renewable energy based hydrogen, then you have to reduce the cost of renewable based hydrogen system. Then only it can give the tough competition for hydrogen from the hydrocarbons. Okay. Then the storage. The storage also very important task. So it is a great challenge to decrease the volume as well as decrease the weight of the system. Right. Again, distribution. Again, you have to construct lot of. You need having a lot of infrastructure, like you have a battery storage, like charging points for battery vehicles. Similar to here for hydrogen also, we have to have some refilling stations like our petrol bunks. So we have to create a lot of infrastructure for hydrogen refilling stations. Utilization, we have to develop other applications to use this hydrogen for various purpose. That is the various challenges for hydrogen economy coming year. So with this, I'll stop. If you have any questions, I can answer.
From participants, anything you required regarding the session, you require any data, please ask question participants.
Sir, voice is audible, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Sir, I'm actually Dr. Ravichandra Ganesh from Chennai, sir.
Okay, sir.
Sir, so much of research is going on hydrogen fuel cells, but
Yes, sir.
still it's not there in the market. And how long it will take time to get into a little bit cheaper rates in market, sir?
Actually, sir, in India it is not there, but the fuel cell vehicles are using in Japan and Germany. Okay.
No, sir.
In India-
Cost-wise, actually, we
Yeah,
are
cost
feeling that. Yes, sir.
cost-wise, the cost basically coming from the hydrogen production. As I told, now the 1 kg of hydrogen in India is almost
Okay, sir.
$10.
Oh,
But now the cost has to reduce. Like if you see like solar PV, so
Right,
it used
sir.
to have like 14 rupees per
Okay.
unit. Now
Oh.
the recent bid is around 2.44
okay.
because this is like mass production. Again, now the Reliance is coming to picture. Then obviously you can expect their
Okay.
production and the cost how it will be done. Like their target is up to $1 by 2030, 1 kg of hydrogen. So if it is
Okay.
1 kg of hydrogen for $1, obviously this will be big competitive for other IC engines as well as battery-based vehicles.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Any participants, please? Okay, sir. Thank you for all covering, sir. Replacement of oil for the transportation sector, global potential, green car sector strategy. Thank you, sir, for giving valuable suggestions as well as the lecturer on this topic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thanks once again for your invitation, sir.
Fine, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. Very informative session, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all the participants, today the link attendance, day one link attendance was posted here. Please fill the Google format attendance link. And session 1 PPT is already shared by in a WhatsApp group. And session 2 PPTs, the resource person is not interested to give because he's collaborated some other way. So that's why he's not sharing. In session 3, I will ask the person's resource person. If he is willing, okay, I will share you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Please mark the attendance link already forwarded. It will enable up to 5 o'clock. Please fill, sir. Okay, sir. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we will meet, sir. Session 4 we are going to start. Please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So feedback link is not required.
Can I know where is the link, sir?
I just wanted to know whether
It is available, madam, in a chat box, sir. Please see there. So it is there in chat box. Feedback link is not required. At the end of the 5th day sessions, we will take the feedback, madam. Present, you fill the attendance link, that's all.